York Times editorial board says Biden should take voters' concerns about age seriously. Doug Collins, former Republican congressman for Georgia, and Kevin Walling, former Biden campaign surrogate. Great to see you both. You know what? I'm going to start with you, Kevin, because I am curious about this. Kennedy, 69 years old. He put his announcement out this weekend as well, talking all about things that on both sides of the aisle people care about. Mainly, for Republicans, freedom issues, vaccines, all that sort of thing. Feeding people. People are hungry. The prices of food, so on and so forth. Should Biden be worried?
I don't think the president should be. Listen, the president did an incredible job in terms of clearing the Democratic field. He's rallied Democrats to his cause, no leading primary challenges out there against him. So I think the president is in really good shape when it comes to the party establishment, the Democratic Party officials in terms of running and clearing the field. And that's, I think, indicative of not just what he's been able to accomplish over the last 2 years, but also the really strong midterm election that he had, the best kind of shape that an incumbent president has been in 100 years. So I think the Democratic Party is fairly fired up for this president to run for re-election.
They're going to have to be out there and fired up because he's not even going to be live tomorrow, potentially, when he makes his announcement via video. I thought run the table, clear the field. I don't know if those are kitchen table issues for people. Doug Collins, I tend to think that they want to hear words like he's got better ideas about inflation this time.
Yeah, I love the optimism, my friend Kevin. I mean, but come on, he cleared a field of non-existent candidates. I mean, there's the field on the Democratic side was weak to start with, and you've seen that turn back to Biden as the president, and we just need to stay here. And look, I think that record to run on is going to be the issue. That's going to be the concern because, I mean, for what Democrats like to tout as successes is not showing up in the mainstream Americans, either pocketbooks or in their job opportunity outlook, and especially our standing around the world. Another big issue is going to be is age shouldn't be an issue to keep anybody from if they're competent in doing their job. The problem is we're seeing the things around the world happen that tend to show that he has gaps. We're losing support in other nations. We just had to evacuate another embassy. These are things that cannot hide in the basement, so to speak, in this campaign. He's going to have to be out there talking about it. I think that's what scares the White House more than anything.
Yeah, and 16,000 Americans left inside the country of Sudan. Look, no one can make that situation perfect, but I'm hoping that there's some generals that he's going to listen to this time around. The Wall Street Journal's editorial board says a second term for President Biden would be a mistake. Many Democrats think Biden is the only man for the job because otherwise they would be stuck with Vice President Harris. But if Biden bowed out now, Democratic governors and others would have an ample period of time to organize a campaign and compete for the nomination. The way to get stuck with VP Harris is if Biden clears the field. Oh, look, there's Kevin's favorite expression. But then has a health setback that forces him to withdraw after the primaries are mostly done. So, Kevin, I want to go back to you and ask you a serious question here. When you have a Kennedy run, it gets people's attention, especially when he really is running as a centrist, much more than Biden has proven that he could ever be a centrist in office as president.
Well, Harris, with all due respect to Bobby Kennedy Jr., I really don't think he's actually a serious candidate in terms of his positions and where he's coming from, especially on the vaccine issue. So I think he's an also ran. But to Doug's point, I think you're going to see the president out there more. He just kicked off a month, just wrapped up a month of traveling around the country talking about the infrastructure bill that he was able to pass with Republicans
went down.
Investing in our country.
And the polling went down.
Well, Harris,
you had him out there and he talked. And Doug, that might be a reason why you pre-record your announcement and then you don't let anybody see him in news conferences or anything for a little while because the polling went down the more they saw Biden.
Well, and Kevin's right about that, but Harris, also the polling went down, but he's not going to be able to stay. And I think this is the one thing that most people are very frustrated about in the last presidential race. He stayed in the basement. Nobody actually got to see him except in very small events because of COVID. This is a different story. And everybody knows, whether you love Joe Biden or hate Joe Biden, everybody knows there's one thing about Joe Biden. He typically will say what's on his mind, and a lot of times it's wrong. A lot of times they have to go back and clean it up. That's going to be the interesting issue in this campaign. But then it plays to the other part of this. If they have these gaps and it doesn't seem like he knows where he's at or who's around him or what's going on, if those come up, even if it's just momentary slips, they're going to attribute it to age, and that is going to be a hard thing for the Biden campaign to overcome.
How do you choreograph around that, Kevin? You're really good with messaging, and you know that about yourself. What would you be telling him?
Well, I think, Harris, those gaffes that Doug talks about, and the president has been, a gaffe machine for most of his career. This is not new. But I think that's also what endears him to the American people. To Doug's point, he speaks his mind, and sometimes it has to
not
get
actually
cleaned
there,
up.
invisible people, you think that that's what the American people want to see? And look, I can name 10, and they're all factual. That was one. You have him wandering off. You've got audio of people trying to get him to go the other way. I remember that FEMA center that he went to, and he was trying to help after a disaster, and they couldn't teach him which way to walk. And I mean, the world stage is watching us. You've seen that same thing with Donald Trump, who is the likely Republican nominee. You've seen him sliding down entryways. You've seen him talking about airports during the American Revolutionary War. Oh, okay, I gotta let you go.
I'm just saying it's going to be a comparison election.
I mean, you're helping now. You're helping the other side.
And we better buckle up for the night.
So good to see you both.
We better buckle up for the next 19 months.
Okay. Oh, wow. Good to see you both. I'll bring you back.